Patrick Sweeney, what is your life's purpose?
My life's purpose, Moritz, is to make 1,000 unicorns. So I want to help founders build truly impactful companies and go beyond a company and actually create a movement.
1,000 unicorns.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate a bit further what a unicorn is in your case?
Okay, of course. Yeah, for those of you listening who aren't familiar with the term unicorn, it's a company that achieves normally there's startups when you refer to them, but it's a company that achieves a valuation of over $1 billion. So, we hear a lot about companies like NVIDIA or, OpenAI or what have you, but there are so many more companies that have that $1 billion valuation. And I've helped create a couple already as a, angel investor or advisor. And so my goal with my new book, which is called The Founder's Creed, is to create 1,000 unicorns. And that's what gets me out of bed in the morning, is working with some of these companies and seeing how we can get them to the next level and continue this great hyper growth that a lot of them have.
But this isn't what you've always done, right? You were an athlete before.
So I was an athlete. I was a rower, and in German, I think the term is Ruden. And
Yes, it is. Wow, that was actually perfect.
yeah, thanks. And so I spent 6 years training for the Olympics in rowing, and rowed the single sculls. So one man rowing in the Olympic trials, finished second in the Olympic trials, and raced the World Cup for 3 years, and just had an amazing experience as an athlete. And that led me into a really good opportunities with the top business schools in the world. And then that started an entrepreneurial journey after that.
Was that always your plan? Doing something sporty for the first few years and then going all in into business afterwards? Or did that just happen?
No, it's funny, Moritz, because it happened because of my insecurity and probably my shame and my fear. So I grew up in Boston, just outside of Boston, a town called Belmont, and it was very blue collar at the time. So a lot of Irish and Italian immigrants, and my family's first generation Irish immigrants. And during that time, it was, normally in my family, you're either a cop or a fireman or maybe a teacher. And occasionally, if you were, really the angel of the family, you'd become a priest. So no one in my family ever went to college, and no one ever talked about fear or being afraid, because that meant you were a wimp. And if you're talking about that shit, then you're not part of the Sweeney family. So I had a ton of fear, mostly because I saw a plane crash on TV when I was 6 years old, and that planted this incredible fear of flying in me for, the next 30 years. I was terrified to get on a plane, even look at a plane or talk about flying or anything like that scared me because of that first accident I saw. And so I was carrying around all this fear. Then, I became afraid of everything. And because I had this fear, I was ashamed. So, I felt, oh, I shouldn't feel this. My uncle doesn't feel this. My grandfather doesn't feel this. My dad doesn't feel this. Why am I, so weak and feeling all this fear and anxiety? And so I thought to myself, if I become really good at a sport, then I'll have courage. I'll be strong. I'll be confident. I'll be able to go talk to girls, and I'll be able to, take big risks and get on a plane. And so I started rowing in college and became quite good at it. Have the right, physique for it. I'm tall and have good power in my muscles, and so that started a rowing journey where I won a national championship in our division for university. I was at the University of New Hampshire, and when I won, I graduated college, university, and then started working for a bunch of local entrepreneurs. And they had a few different business industries, like a chain of hotels and
Mm.
real estate developments. I was learning a lot, but I always wondered if I could get better at the rowing and be really good, because I'd only done it for a couple of years, and I felt really confident when I was rowing, and it was a feeling that was really unique to doing the rowing. So I managed to get a tryout with the Olympic Training Center in Boston, and much to my surprise and shock, I got accepted to stay and train with the team. And it was on the water when I really felt my best, and I felt like I was in that state of flow. I was confident. I was ready for anything that was going to come my way. But unfortunately, it didn't translate to the rest of my life.
And therefore, you just took on the challenge after the Olympic athlete thing.
After the Olympic athlete thing, Moritz, I thought, okay, if I'm going to be courageous and I'm going to be strong and confident, I need to make a lot of money. So I'm going to make
Ah,
40 by 40. That's going to be the secret. And I'm going to make myself a net worth of $40 million by the time I'm 40 years old. And that became my goal above everything else. I'd wake up, in the morning, and I'd be focused on building this company, or creating more. I was initially working on data centers for the largest real estate company in the world, Trammell Crow, and we built about 6 million square feet of data center space, or about 600,000 square meters. And I started to become really successful and understand this market for computing and data centers and everything else. So I left to start my own company, and which was really the first cloud hosting company, about 4 years before Amazon created AWS, which is their big cloud service. And so I started this company called ServerVault, raised a ton of money, but because of the fear that was underlying everything I did, Moritz, the decisions I made, when we make decisions, we have two paths we can go down. We can either make a decision out of opportunity, or we can make a decision out of fear. And I was always making my decisions out of fear, and normally that leads to regret. And so when you make a decision out of opportunity, that leads to learning and opening up doors and really growing as a person. And I wasn't doing that. I was doing things to protect myself or my ego, or not show that fear. And so I made every mistake a first-time CEO could possibly make. But despite that, the company was quite successful. We raised a lot of money, and we merged with another company, and we sold for $350 million to this group called QTS, which is, I think, the third or fourth largest cloud hosting company now, that still uses our platform as kind of the backbone for their
mhm.
system. And that's 20 plus years later. So it was really the entrepreneurial journey where I tried to build this confidence and really be the person who I thought was the real me, but it never materialized until something really bad happened.
It's crazy to think about it, because just when you talked about fear and everything, in my mind, the first question was how many of us actually make their decisions out of fear, or are just afraid and therefore want to be successful, are just afraid that they're a nobody, quite frankly, in my case at least. One of the main reasons for that, it always has been. I wonder how many people do that without even thinking that it is, at the end of the day, fear. Because on the whole road process to getting confident, getting your money, and getting strong and everything, going to the gym, you never feel like you are the one who fears something. You are always going out there, try something. Sometimes you say, okay, today maybe not, and everything. But just hearing you saying that there is always fear involved, or sometimes for many people, fear involved in many of their decisions, even though they're trying to do something impressive, or something that many people would be afraid
Yeah,
about.
a 100%, Moritz. And there's two things that brings to mind for me. After my first book came out, Fear is Fuel, that hit number 5 on the Wall Street Journal bestseller list, and I got calls from companies all over the world to come and speak and talk about how to use your fear as fuel. And I started speaking in part of a group called Young Presidents Organization, or YPO, and have spoken to, I don't know, probably 50 or 60 YPO chapters around the world, and each chapter has between 100 and 200 CEOs of big companies, from the COO of Facebook to the King of Jordan. They're all members of YPO. So I've spoken in front of, let's say 50 chapters, 100 chapters easily 5,000 CEOs across the world. And one of the things I found that was most surprising for me, after each keynote, I'll spend time with the leadership team or the CEOs, and I get a chance to talk to them and get some real insight. And one of the things I was shocked at is probably 90% of the CEOs that I talked with all said they had one thing that they feared the most, or that caused them the most fear at one moment, and it was called or what's called imposter syndrome. So I'm talking with some of the best CEOs in the world, most successful guys on the cover of, Fortune magazine or Bloomberg or whatever. And they're saying, I had this period, it was a bad period for me. We missed earnings, or we were late in delivering a product, and I felt like an imposter. I felt like, what am I doing here? Why am I talking to all these people? Why am I up on the stage? And so everybody, if the top CEOs in the world are feeling imposter syndrome, then someone listening to your podcast who wants to start their own company, or maybe, get a promotion or go to a different part of their current business, they shouldn't feel bad about feeling this fear and feeling this anxiety and feeling this stress, because everybody feels the same thing, because we're running this 2 million-year-old piece of software on our fear center, right? And with our fear center is called the amygdala. It's a little gland in the primitive part of your brain, and all it cares about is keeping you safe and perpetuating your genes onto the next generation. So it doesn't care about getting a promotion, getting a wonderful spouse, having an exciting vacation. It doesn't care about any of those things. So that's what's driving our decision making, is that 2 million-year-old piece of software. And that's what people have to reprogram if they really want to have a successful and fulfilling life.
How do you start with reprogramming your own brain? The
Yeah.
only thing that kept you alive for the last few years. How do you throw all of that overboard? What is the first step everybody should take?
So the first step everybody should take is learn how to breathe. And this is the easiest bit of dealing with anxiety. I teach a methodology called the 4x4. You breathe in for a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4. You let out, and you hold it out. So you do this, what Navy SEALs call box breathing, 4, 4, 4, 4. And what that does is, and people talk about mindfulness or meditation, or breathing is all associated with those things. But really, our brain receives information two ways: top down and bottoms up. So top down is taking all the external stimuli that we see and processing it and sending it to our brain, so our brain can predict the outcome of the situation, because our brain is really a prediction engine. So with the top down information, we get things that we see, whatever we hear, maybe what we feel on our skin or what we touch, and that's all the top down information. The bottoms up is things like your heartbeat, your breathing, the where your blood flow is going and directed towards. All these things are internal or bottoms up. So if you can control your breathing and you get into that that 4x4 rhythm, then what your brain says is, hey, I'm getting a signal from the breath that everything's cool. We're taking long, steady breaths. We're not hyperventilating, so there's no which would be the signal that we're in danger. So it shuts off the amygdala. So the amygdala, that little gland I was talking about, always when we get scared tries to hijack our thinking. So we've got a part of the brain, the newest part of the brain, it's called the prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex is what allows us to make really good decisions. But we have to become aware of those decisions. So the first thing to do is breathe when we feel scared. And when we feel scared, it's usually the same place. So if you went and stand on the edge of a cliff or held a snake or went to do public speaking, you'll notice that in your stomach or maybe in your shoulders, some people with their jaw, everybody has their own way of feeling fear and feeling anxiety when our body starts to respond to that fight or flight syndrome. And so what we need to do is practice that. So if you want to start reprogramming your brain, first thing you have to do is learn how to breathe. So do those 4x4s and then start scaring yourself. And what you want to do when you scare yourself is get the amygdala under control. So the breathing does that. And then the key thing to reprogramming the brain is to say, stop. I'm going to replace this judgment that I have about the situation with curiosity. So if you can replace judgment with curiosity, then you're using both hemispheres of your brain. So what happens when we're in survival mode, when we're scared, we make very fast decisions. And that's called, it's a phenomenon called valence. And it's there to help us survive because we make quicker decisions. So for example, if you were growing up where I grew up, in Boston, blue collar, Irish Catholic neighborhood, everything's very traditional and very conservative. And you walked into a Starbucks and you saw this guy who looked like he was a victim of a drive-by piercing. He, had pierced in his nose and the eyelid and everything else. You're trained from a child from your tribe to say, "Oh, look at that freak. He's not part of my tribe." So you immediately make a judgment.
Hmm.
Now, and we see this in people all the time. If you take that judgment and you say, stop, what can I find that's interesting or compelling or lovable about this person? What can I do to change that original judgment? So you be curious, and you say, well, he must have a tremendous threshold of pain because I could never stick something in my eyelid like that. Or he doesn't care what people think about him, so he's super confident. Or whatever it is, if you stop then and you change your judgment, then what you're doing is you're actually changing your future past. So I know that sounds a little bit trippy, but when we make decisions, 80% of the time it's with our subconscious mind. Whatever gets put into our subconscious, and usually we don't control it until we're much older, is how we make decisions. So all those things that we put into our subconscious now are going to affect our decisions in the future. So if you stop your judgment and you think, well, what can I find interesting about this guy? And then in the future, that's going into your memory. And next time you go to Starbucks, you say, hey, I want the guy with all the piercings because he was super nice and made a great latte. And you have a completely different view and orientation on the world because you've replaced that judgment with curiosity.
It's so crazy to think about it, because when I ruminate it right now a little bit, the whole podcast sometimes had situations where I had a person on the other side, and the whole motto of the podcast is I interview everybody and I want to hear everybody, and I mean it. I really mean it. But of course, with that, there also comes sometimes the situation that I sit with somebody here whose opinion is not the same as mine on some topics, or has a new perspective on life, and that's exactly what I wanted here. And of course, it's the curiosity on why do they think what they think, why do they do what they do, and everything. But it was always subconsciously a little bit, and it wasn't something that I did before a lot. I was a very introverted kid for a long time. I was gaming a lot. I was only trying to hang out with my online friends or the friends from school, not trying to meet anybody new or anybody else, and judging everybody I play against, everybody I saw on a bus, everything. And it's still, I find myself here and there in the U-Bahn or something like that, in the subway here in Munich, to be judgmental, but I um I I notice it. It's not
Good.
going just, oh
Or
yeah,
aware, you're
wow.
aware, you have awareness. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I'm aware that what I'm doing right now is not the best, but still I feel guilty for it most of the time. But never knew a better way out. So thank you very much for pointing this curiosity thing completely out. But there's
Absolutely.
also another thing. So many people go out there. They now, especially in times of social media, everybody sees the success of someone else. It's so easy to display your own success, and everybody right now, at least in my generation, wants to become successful. And some are starting a startup. And for this, you have something, I need to look it up, the belief gap. What is a belief gap for a newly found startup?
So this is exactly what I go through in the new book, The Founder's Creed, because it's not strategy, it's not investment, it's not innovation that makes companies fail. It's a misalignment of belief. So let's use Tesla because it's one of the easiest examples. If you go back 15 years, you'll see Elon Musk over here on this side of the belief gap, who's saying, "I can build a car that's faster than a Porsche, that goes 300 miles on one charge, and that costs $35,000." And you've got the rest of the world over here saying you're crazy. You know, General Motors tried to do it. The Toyota has this hybrid Prius that's horrible, and you know, there's no way that you can do what you're going to do. And so the distance between what a founder believes and this vision that he or she has for the future and what the rest of the world thinks is what I call the belief gap. And to cross that belief gap, you need two groups to help you get across it. You need internal believers. So those are your employees, your advisors, your board members. You need external believers. Those are your customers, journalists, analysts, you know, venture capitalists. And so if you have those two groups, and you align your belief, and this is where a lot of companies make the mistake. They have an illusion of alignment. They don't have actual alignment. But if you align your belief, you get this tremendous power based on your convictions. And the tighter a company is aligned on their belief, the more conviction they have. The more conviction they have, the faster their decision-making loops. So in the book, I introduce a new concept called the Buddha Doctrine. And Buddha is an acronym BOODA for believe, observe, orient, decide, and act. And that Buddha loop is what creates great companies. It's based on a military doctrine called the OODA loop, which was taught by an incredible fighter pilot called John Boyd, Colonel John Boyd. He came up with this OODA loop idea back in the 70s. And the observe, orient, decide, and act, he said this is what every fighter pilot has to do when they're in an air-to-air combat situation. They have to go through this OODA loop. And the pilot who goes through the loops the fastest is the one who always wins. Because every time you observe, you see what's around you, you orient, you go to your brain and everything that you've learned and what you know, and you make sense of it. You make a decision, you act. As soon as you act, you get more data back and new data. So you observe that new data, you orient based on all those things, decide, act again, new data. And so you keep doing this loop. This works tremendously well for Top Gun pilots, right? Because they know when they enlist in the Navy or the Air Force or you know any other service, they know that if you're a U.S. fighter pilot, you've got the best planes in the world, you've got the best instructors in the world, you get more practice time than anyone else, you've got the latest high-tech equipment that nobody else has. So you inherently have this belief that you're the best, that the Top Gun pilots are the best of the best, which is the common saying. So you don't need that component, and this is true of professional sports teams have used the structure of the OODA loop as well. But what it's not true at all with startups. So J.P. Morgan's CEO Jamie Dimon uses the OODA loop every year in their strategy sessions, and one of the things that they found is people who don't believe are the ones who tend to drag down or miss their targets. And the fact of the matter is that you have to have a shared belief to cross that belief gap, right? And it can't just be an internal shared belief. It has to be internal and external. Because if you have an internal shared belief and you're with a group of people in a garage and you built something and nobody's buying and nobody's investing and nobody's writing about it, like those external believers, then you've got a belief glut, right? You've got too much belief that's not justified by the external world. That's why it's so important to have internal believers and external believers to get across that gap.
Wow. So all of that was the first time I heard about it. So thank you very much
You
for
bet.
sharing that. So obviously Tesla made it happen, at least for a few years. They got it out there, the customers bought it. I mean, at least as well here in Munich or in Germany, the whole e-car debate is still ongoing because the main reason nobody wants to have an electronic car is because we don't have enough fill up stations or
Charging
loading
stations.
stations
Yeah.
for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the only real provider for the loading stations we currently have is Tesla. So
Yeah.
it didn't only change America or something like that. They also brought their belief to Germany, what is a crazy idea on its own, and they even managed to close that gap as well because I see in Tesla every single day. There is no misconception or misalignment with that. Why does it happen that sometimes this belief gap is just too big to cross or something like that? How could that happen?
Moritz, I've invested in more than 75 different companies and worked for several venture capital firms, helping out their portfolio companies, which I love to do, and it's great work if companies are on that launch pad, ready to take off, and I've really enjoyed helping them get to the next level, and I think one of the things that is critical is if you're gonna build something for hypergrowth, then you have to make sure that you've got all the structure in place. So it's not, I think some of these TED talks, which are sort of touchy feely and they're kind of make you feel good. You don't need a pep talk, right? You don't need a motivational speaker as you're trying to cross that belief gap. Because what happens when you do, the reason companies don't get across it is that illusion of agreement. Everyone says, "Okay, we're going to secure the internet." That was our term for Server Vault. That was our mission, and our purpose was to secure the internet. And we were going to get across that belief gap because people didn't think in 1999 the internet could be secure enough to put your credit card or put your bank information on, and we were going to fix that. Now, to our CTO, that looked like having the best intrusion detection, the best firewalls, the best port scanning. To our chief operating officer, that looked like having the most scalable onboarding and an automated system to put new clients on. To our sales director, that same thing looked like a custom solution for every single client we had in. So we had all these brilliant leaders. We all thought securing the internet meant something different. So everyone's going in a different direction. It's like, rowing a boat in 10 different directions. And that's what it was. And so that's where most companies fail is they fail to align those beliefs. And in the book, The Founder's Creed, I share this shared belief map, which is a way of aligning everyone's belief and a way of scaling. It's one of the three tools that I reveal in this book that show you how to scale at hypergrowth. So if you're hiring 15 people a month, 20 people a month, you need a structure like this in place, or else you start to get this misalignment of belief.
Mhm. So coming back to the Buddha loop, because we just talked about the first step, the belief thing, that's very important with that. You also have the observe, orientate, decide, and act phases. Which one of those is the most crucial one for everybody out there?
Easy question to answer, Moritz. It's orient.
Why
The
that?
because it's where we tend to fall victim to our own bias. right? So we may have this confirmation bias, right? We're looking for that one or two people who think our solution is great, and they buy it, and they agree with us that it's the best user interface or the best battery backup or whatever the thing is, and we ignore the 75 other people who don't buy it. And we ignore them when they say, "Oh no, it was clunky, it was slow, it didn't make sense," and we say, "Oh, they just don't get it." Right? So
Hmm.
that's a confirmation bias a lot of people have, and this orient phase is where you try and look at it from as many different directions as possible. So if you and I, Moritz, went to the same high school, the same university, and came from the same family, and were the same religion, and spoke the same language, there's not going to be a ton of diversity between the two of us. If you take someone from, wherever, Dublin, Ireland, you take someone from Shanghai, China, and you take someone from Boston, Massachusetts, and you put those three different worldviews together, then you're going to get three very different pictures, but with a lot of overlapping, like a Venn diagram. And that diversification in your decision making really helps you see aspects that other people might not. So the orientation phase is really where you have to be aware of your biases, and then try as much as you can to expand your view on the world. And this is very difficult for startups because our brain, as I mentioned before, is a prediction engine, right? We always want to predict the outcome of every event. And when we can't predict it, we produce something called free energy, which is Carl Friston, who's one of the leading neuroscientists in the world. He's at University of Cambridge in UK. He calls it free energy, and it's really the root of all fear. Is when we can't predict the future, we normally freak out. Founders think they can predict the future. They think they can see a car 10 years from now that's, all the things that a Tesla is. But there's always uncertainty that they're going to face along the way, things they didn't realize as they cross that belief gap. There are obstacles in the way. And the obstacles become the way, as the Stoics say, if you're open and comfortable with that uncertainty. So to really be a great founder, you have to expect and then be able to navigate within all that uncertainty. And so that orientation phase is exactly when that happens, when you aren't sure, like there's no clear-cut decision. But what you have to do is you have to decide, and then you act. And you do those things very quickly, because every time you do, you get information back. And it's just,
Hmm.
there's no good news in business. There's no bad news. There's just information. And you can take that information and do what you want with it. But the quicker you get it, the more likely you are to be able to defeat your opponents.
So, still, when somebody's struggling with observing, orientation, deciding, or acting, you would still recommend them to do it as fast as possible, and to, if in doubt, do it, maybe the wrong thing, but do something else with the new data.
Yeah, that's exactly 100%. And it's easy. And this is what I talk about. Part of the Buddha doctrine is a weekly meeting, called the Buddha Stand Up. And it's a 30-minute meeting you do every week. And basically what you're trying to do, if you look at the startup, it goes in waves, right? There's always these crazy, hectic, mad dash to do something, right? To deploy a customer, to come out with the first version of your MVP, whatever it is. There's this mad, chaotic dash, right? And this chaos is putting out fires, right? So you're a founder is addressing this marketing thing, this product thing, this human resources thing, and always putting out fires, working 100 hours every week, and doing crazy stuff. And then there's the downtime, right? You delivered, everything's, happening, and you don't have that same urgency. What the Buddha doctrine helps you do is replace that chaos with a cadence. And if your cadence is fast, every week we're going to do this Buddha meeting. We're going to go through it. Within 24 hours, we're going to have feedback from our first action item, within 48 hours, feedback from our second action item, and then we're going to do it again. And so if you can replace that chaos with a cadence doing that Buddha loop, then you're always going to win. And you keep that urgency going as something that is architected. It's not something that's kinetic that you react to. You're architecting this cadence in the growth of your company.
This is my last question, and I think I asked it to pretty much everybody in your expertise space or your niche. Is everybody made, or can everybody be able to start their own business or do and start it? And if not, what does everybody who wants to start and start up needs to bring to the table?
So I believe anybody can start their own business, and I think they have a much higher chance of success if they bring a founder in with them. And the founder should be as different as possible from them and their strengths, with the caveat that the values are aligned.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if you and I, Moritz, we decide to start a company, and your idea of starting this company is 3 years, I want to flip it. I want to get, my first $1 million in the bank, and I'm done. And my idea of the company is I want to build a legacy business. I want this business to go on for 100 years after I'm dead. Then we're misaligned in our values, right? No matter how good we are together, because, you're a smart technical guy and, I'm a good finance guy. It doesn't matter. But if you're misaligned in the values, then it's the wrong person. So getting a partner is a great way to start a business and to get across that belief gap. And I think the other thing, there's two other things that I look for in investments. And one is when people scratch their own itch, right? So they have a problem and they think, I'm going to solve this problem somehow or another. And Moritz, since you were a gamer, I'll talk about this company, and I forget what it started out as. It was like Kevin TV or something. It had a very, very simple name that was tracking a guy's life by live streaming it 24/7, right? And he wore this video camera, and this is like 2005, right? Before streaming was ever even, a thing. He had figured out streaming, and it was Kevin's life. And he's there. We're just going to track him when he goes to sleep, when he wakes up, has a shower, when he's eating breakfast. And it was a total ego project, right? But he started the company. He came up with this really cool technical solution, right? Because nobody knew what live streaming was like. And he had a partner with him who said, "Oh, some of my friends are really into gaming. Can I use your thing so they can watch me compete, in this tournament?" So the guy said, "Sure." So the gamers started to say, "Hey, can I get one of those? I want to share my gaming thing." And this is what started Twitch, right? So it started out as like Kevin's network, and now it's a unicorn, right? It's multi-billion-dollar valuation. Gamers, across the globe use it by the millions. And it's because they had two good founders, and they had a problem they were trying to solve. The problem the gamers were trying to solve was, how can I share what I'm doing in real time? So this guy Kevin was really enamored by the technical solution, and one of his co-founders, was really had a problem that needed to be solved. So people who have a problem on their own in something that they're doing or something that they see, and they solve that problem, that's a great sign. Excuse me. The last thing that's really important to keep in mind are technical inflection points. And
Mm-hmm.
technical inflection points oftentimes don't reveal how they're going to change the world. And the best example that I always use is the iPhone 4. The iPhone 4 changed the way we all live and behave and act because of one thing. And Moritz, I'll let you take a guess at what that one thing was. What
Yeah,
came first in the
with
iPhone 4 that wasn't in any other phone up until that point?
yeah, it's hard to answer the question because I think around that space I started
Yeah,
walking, but
yeah. Fair
but
enough.
if I had to guess, it's through the times before you always needed an iPod to listen to music. Maybe with the iPhone 4 you could start to listen from the smartphone
The
itself.
music streaming, that's not it, but that's a great guess, right? Because that the way Apple presented music and the idea of ownership of music and everything else changed everything. But what changed our life is that the iPhone 4 was the first phone to have a GPS chip in it. So this was a technology inflection point most people hadn't thought about. But then when it came and people saw, oh, this knows where I am, that changed mapping technologies, that created Uber and Lyft. It created, DoorDash and things, all because now you had your location down to a couple meters on your phone.
Yeah.
So that was a technical innovation that didn't come with, someone didn't try to create Uber and decide they need to solve this problem. It came before the solutions had it. So if you look at the way technology is evolving today, whether it's quantum computing, whether it's AI, whether it's AGI, it doesn't matter. If you look in those technology inflection points, how can they change the way that we live today? And that's a great thing to build a company on.
Thank you so much for all of this insight. When people want to buy your book, where should they go?
Well, if they're enjoyed our conversation, and I thank them all for taking the time to listen today, thefounderscreed.com is the website. The book will be up in 2 weeks on Amazon to pre-order. So my first book, Fear is Fuel, is on Amazon right now. The next book, The Founder's Creed, will be on Amazon by the time this podcast comes out, mid-February.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And and then, of course, you can always hit me up on LinkedIn, The Fear Guru, and Patrick J. Sweeney, and Instagram, same thing, The Fear Guru. So I'm happy to take any questions or hear anything that your listeners want to share.
Thank you so much for your time and have a good one.
Thanks, you too, Moritz. We'll see you.